When it comes to Kendrick Lamar and everything happening around the West Coast scene right now, the temperature is definitely rising. More and more voices are making their positions clear, including several major figures showing support for the same side of hip-hop that Kendrick appears to represent. And if you think that's interesting, just wait, because the conversation gets even bigger when we start talking about the leaked Kendrick Lamar record known as Boom. New details have surfaced, and some recent developments may have given us the strongest indication yet that this track could eventually see an official release. But before we dive into all of that, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and show some love to the video. And if you're the type of fan who gets more excited about a surprise Kendrick leak than another recycled industry rollout, go ahead and let that support be known right now. Now, when it comes to this leaked Kendrick Lamar track, I have to be honest, things are starting to get very interesting. At first, most people viewed it as nothing more than a leftover record from the GNX era, and that seemed like a reasonable assumption. But the more information that comes out, the more it feels like this situation may be much bigger than people originally thought. The track has now reportedly been identified and targeted by Interscope Records across multiple platforms where it was uploaded and shared. That's where things stand at the moment. And as the song continues spreading across the internet and generating more discussion, many of the original uploads and sources connected to the leak are beginning to disappear due to copyright action. That tells us something important. In fact, it points to two major conclusions, especially for people who may not follow the leak scene closely. There's been a narrative floating around that Kendrick intentionally leaked the song to test audience reaction, the way some artists have done in the past. But based on what we're seeing, that theory doesn't really hold up. The biggest reason is simple. When songs are intentionally leaked, they often remain untouched online because the release is being quietly allowed from the source. Kendrick's situation looks completely different because this record is actively being removed and claimed wherever it appears, and that changes the conversation entirely. If this was some calculated rollout strategy, why go through the effort of aggressively taking it down? That just wouldn't make much sense. What we're seeing instead appears to be a genuine leak, one that has real significance and real impact within the music world. The discussion around it keeps growing, and fans now have access to another Kendrick Lamar track, despite it never arriving through official channels. What's especially interesting is that we've actually seen something similar before. Last year, when the Clips record Chains and Whips started circulating without Kendrick's verse attached, database systems were already flagging the song and connecting Kendrick's name to it before the public even knew he was involved. So when we compare that situation to what's happening now, there are definitely some similarities worth paying attention to. And if this leak is receiving the same level of enforcement and attention behind the scenes, then at minimum, it suggests the record carries more value than a simple discarded throwaway. Even using the most cautious interpretation possible, it's reasonable to conclude that there's more going on here than fans initially believed. And things get even more interesting when you look at the reaction coming from none other than TDE executive Punch himself, who responded to the situation by saying that leaks ruin every great idea. From the way he addressed it, you could tell there was genuine frustration surrounding the record making its way online. When someone who played such a major role in Kendrick Lamar's rise and still remains one of the key voices at TDE speaks like that, it definitely grabs attention. More importantly, it makes this entire situation feel both more intriguing and more complicated because it strongly suggests that neither Kendrick nor anyone directly connected to his camp intended for this song to reach the public. Somehow, somewhere, the track slipped through the cracks. Whether that happened because of a mistake inside the label system or because someone deliberately pushed it out remains unclear. We all know the music business has its fair share of people willing to create chaos for their own reasons. But when you look at the reaction and the effort being made around this leak, it feels like the record was much closer to completion than many originally assumed. Because if it wasn't important, why react this strongly? Why make such a public statement? Usually, that kind of response only happens when something bigger is attached to the record. And honestly, I think Punch's comments may actually help us understand what that bigger plan was. Personally, I don't believe this song was meant for Kendrick Lamar's next solo album. Instead, I think we're seeing evidence that the GNX vault may have been opened behind the scenes. And if that's true, there's a good chance other artists are benefiting from those sessions as well. In this particular case, the track could have been intended as a lead single or key album cut for J-Rock, Ray Vaughn, or another artist connected to TDE's upcoming plans. It may have even been saved for a larger label project tied to Top Dog Entertainment itself. Remember, TDE previously discussed the possibility of a major compilation release connected to their anniversary celebrations. Even though that timeline has technically passed, I still wouldn't be surprised if they're preparing a larger collective effort to spotlight both their established stars and their newer talent. At this stage, the roster has grown significantly, and a project like that would be the perfect opportunity to strengthen careers while honoring the label's legacy. When you combine Punch's reaction, the artists connected to the track, and the unusual way the leak surfaced, it becomes harder to believe this record was sitting exclusively inside Kendrick's personal vault. Everything points toward additional people having access to it. What we're slowly discovering is that this appears less like a P. Lang release and more like something connected directly to TDE. And if that's the case, I wouldn't be shocked if several unreleased Kendrick-era records eventually find new life through other artists in the near future. Right now, that's where the evidence seems to be pointing. That's all we can responsibly say based on the information currently available. But what makes this story feel even more significant is everything else happening around the West Coast at the same time. The movement that's forming isn't stopping with one leaked song. In fact, there are signs that something much larger is taking shape, and we may see one of the clearest examples of that very soon through an upcoming album that Kendrick Lamar appears to have influenced in some capacity. Whether that involvement came through creative guidance, behind-the-scenes collaboration, mentoring, or even unofficial executive production, the fingerprints seem impossible to ignore. The project in question is YG's upcoming album, The Gentleman's Club, and the rollout is already generating attention. Based on what we're seeing, YG isn't approaching this record like a routine release. Instead, he seems determined to create something bigger, more ambitious, and more concept-driven than anything we've seen from him recently. He recently dropped a major single designed to set the tone for the album and possibly hint at what's still to come. That track is Insecure, featuring TDE heavyweight Ab Soul. And honestly, this is where you can really start seeing the benefits of that West Coast collaboration and creative influence paying off. The record also features Daylit, adding another respected voice to the mix. Rather than simply exchanging bars, the artists came together to create a darker and more reflective anthem centered around personal fears and vulnerabilities. It was a surprising shift in direction, and a powerful one at that. More than anything, seeing these artists united while openly discussing their insecurities showed a level of maturity and connection that you don't often get in rap music today. It's definitely a bold move, especially when you're talking about a song that's helping introduce a major album rollout. And honestly, I understand why some fans expected something completely different once they saw the names attached to the record. When you see artists like these on the same track, your first thought is usually that you're about to hear an all-out lyrical showcase. Instead, they chose a different direction and created the record they genuinely wanted to make. And for that alone, I have to give them credit, because taking creative risks is becoming increasingly rare in today's rap landscape. This is exactly the kind of experimentation that keeps hip-hop evolving. But the reason this conversation matters goes beyond the music itself and whether people personally enjoy the song or not. There's another layer to this story that makes the timing especially interesting. This also happens to be one of Daylight's first major releases following the controversy that erupted roughly a month ago involving comments directed toward J. Cole. If you remember, Daylight posted and later deleted remarks criticizing bars that Cole had delivered, making it pretty clear that there was some level of frustration there. The bars in question came from Cole's Birthday Blizzard project, where he made a statement suggesting that if hip-hop were still fully appreciated the way it once was, Daylight would already be a platinum artist. After Daylight publicly dismissed those lines before removing the posts, it fueled speculation that there may be deeper issues between the two artists. And according to many fans, those tensions didn't appear overnight. Instead, people believe they've been building for quite some time due to various situations, including expectations surrounding the fall-off and other opportunities that never seemed to materialize. Even figures close to the conversation, including Joey, have added fuel to those discussions by hinting at frustrations involving how Daylight has been positioned within the industry. So when you look at the bigger picture, seeing Daylight appear on a record like this during one of the most divided periods in modern hip-hop feels significant. Here he is stepping directly into a West Coast-centered movement alongside artists who represent a completely different circle of influence. He already has history and chemistry with Ab-Soul, and their friendship makes the collaboration feel natural. But now you add YG into the equation as well. Then you zoom out even further and consider the larger momentum surrounding the West Coast resurgence and the influence many people believe Kendrick Lamar has behind the scenes. When all those pieces come together, it starts looking like something more than just another feature appearance. Personally, I think we're watching an artist search for a new environment, a new audience, and potentially a new support system within the rap world. Every major artist eventually reaches a point where they need people around them who can help elevate the next phase of their career. Whether that's a label structure, a creative collective, strong collaborators, or simply artists willing to share major moments together, those relationships matter. And based on some of the frustrations Daylight has publicly hinted at, it seems fair to question whether he feels he received that kind of support in previous situations. When you look at how his career has developed alongside the opportunities many fans believed were available, it's easy to understand why these conversations continue. People point to moments when the spotlight was there and the potential for a major breakthrough felt undeniable. Songs like Surround Sound exploded in popularity and generated enormous momentum. Then projects like The Forever Story arrived and further proved the level of talent that was already there. Yet, despite those opportunities, many fans feel there wasn't enough strategic support to fully capitalize on the momentum. And whether that's completely fair or not, the perception remains that some doors never opened the way people expected them to. From that perspective, it's understandable why so many are paying close attention to where Daylight aligns himself next and what role these new collaborations could play in shaping the future of his career. I mean, when you're talking about an artist with JID's level of talent, it's hard not to wonder how things could have played out differently. The situation almost mirrors stories we've heard before, where elite artists felt they never received the opportunities or backing their talent deserved. Looking at everything surrounding JID's career right now, the biggest takeaway is that he seems frustrated. Not frustrated about one thing, but about a collection of things that have likely been building for years. And it's completely possible that he's reached a point where he's questioning some of the decisions that shaped his journey. Maybe he wonders what would have happened if he had been part of a different ecosystem, whether that's TDE, PG Lang, or another collective that may have positioned him differently. Because regardless of where you rank him, there's no denying that JID possesses the type of ability that only comes around once in a generation. And honestly, one of the most overlooked stories in hip-hop today might be what's happening with him right now. We're potentially watching a generational talent try to break free from circumstances that many fans believe limited his ceiling. More importantly, we're seeing him become increasingly vocal about those frustrations. The signs are there if you've been paying attention. Even moments like this suggest that he's actively searching for a path that can elevate his career to the level many believe it should have already reached. We're talking about the kind of support system that helps transform a respected lyricist into a genuine superstar. And while there's still a lot we don't know, one thing that continues to fascinate me is the possibility of JID and Kendrick Lamar eventually crossing paths in a bigger way. Right now, JID is operating within circles that increasingly overlap with artists connected to the West Coast movement. And of course, when people talk about influence within that space, Kendrick's name sits at the center of the conversation. We also know that both artists were present at the Clips event in Los Angeles, where Kendrick performed Chains and Whips last year. That naturally raises questions. Did they meet? Did they have conversations behind the scenes? Were introductions made through mutual connections? It's impossible to know for sure, but it's definitely something worth paying attention to, especially when you consider how openly JID has spoken about his admiration for Kendrick over the years. He's never hidden the respect he has for Kendrick's artistry and impact on the culture. And throughout the major rap discussions of the past year, many fans noticed that JID never appeared eager to jump into certain camps or narratives. So when you put all these pieces together, it feels like there may be much more happening behind the scenes than the public currently realizes. Of course, that's speculation, and we should be careful not to treat theories as facts, but I do believe we're going to learn a lot more in the near future. Because if YG is assembling ambitious projects, if TDE artists are building momentum, and if records connected to Kendrick's creative orbit are beginning to surface unexpectedly, then clearly there's a tremendous amount of activity taking place. None of this feels random. It feels like artists are working towards something larger. And when all these moving parts eventually connect, the story could become much bigger than people expect. So stay locked in, because names like YG, Kendrick, JID, Ray Vaughn, J-Rock, Ab-Soul, and many others seem to be part of a growing wave that's only beginning to gain momentum. With all that being said, I want to hear from you. What do you think about the leaked Kendrick record and the possibility that it eventually receives an official release? What are your thoughts on the copyright takedowns and Punch's reaction to the entire situation? And where do you stand on everything happening around JID right now? Did you enjoy Insecure? And what do you think that collaboration says about where his career may be heading? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because this is one of those conversations where fan opinions are just as interesting as the story itself. Do you think building stronger ties with the West Coast could ultimately benefit JID moving forward? A lot of people believe that's an environment that would genuinely appreciate and maximize his talents. And while this next idea is probably more fan fiction than reality, I've mentioned it before and I'll say it again. I'm not telling anyone to expect it, but the thought of JID working closely with PG Lang, or even becoming part of the broader TDE family, is definitely an interesting one. The possibilities would be fascinating to watch. But anyway, if you made it all the way to the end of the video, I genuinely appreciate you for watching and supporting the channel.